wanna stay ahead of the curve, then follow my words. All we doing, teach, train, innovate, solve, yeah. Teach, train, innovate, solve. If you wanna be ahead of the curve, then follow my words.
Good evening, good evening, good evening, everyone. What I've discovered is that many teacher candidates can name the 13 eligibility categories for special education services. Last week, we talked about autism. Tonight, we're going to spotlight a little bit of specific learning disabilities. We got emotional disturbances, other health impairment. And generally, you can memorize that list. But the exam that been talking to you about gives way more than just a list. It gives scenarios, and then suddenly many feel blurry because SPED 186 is asking you, can you make an educational decision based on student data? And that is a completely different skill. So tonight, I want to help you shift your thinking, because this is exact issue is one of the reasons that strong preparing educators miss domain 1 questions. And I also want to welcome you back. I'm Tamara Gibson, the owner of TT Innovative Solutions, where we help educators stop guessing and build confidence while giving you practical tools that you can use today. And if you're new here, make sure you subscribe before we break down this exam through a lens of decision-making. Many of you already know the 13 eligibility categories. And if I were to ask you and have discussion, you would be able to list those with no problem. And last week's conversation online, where I shared about autism, while it enlightened some, they still had questions. So knowing these categories is not the same as understanding what the data is, what is the functional impact, or I like to shorten and say what is the need, and what action should happen next. That's where these Pearson-style rigor really begins. And so I want to jump into our conversation with our presentation this evening to ensure that you know exactly what they're going to ask you, because they're not going to tell you what I'm going to tell you tonight. And so let's just jump right into our agenda. I'm going to be ambitious, and I'm going to try my best to make certain that I talk to you about what the exam wants you to analyze, you putting on your analyst skills. I want to make sure that you're not jumping to conclusions, and that you become a stronger analyst from some of the details that I provide you with this evening. And lastly, as I started by saying, last week, my spotlight was autism. Tonight's spotlight is SLD. It is the category that most students are being qualifying for, excuse me. And so I want to cover that with you tonight. But I also want you to start by writing something down, because what really is the exam testing? The exam rarely tests labels in isolation. That's what I want you to write down. It's really testing your access, participation, and the impact on educational performance and appropriate support decisions. That's what it's doing. That means that this exam wants you to analyze patterns, behaviors, and academic impact that it's going to have. They also touch on communication, social functioning, adaptive skills, and whether the student's need requires specific designed instruction. That is why surface level thinking becomes very dangerous. And many of the times I often give you some of those surface level conversations because I want you to know and to move away from them. Because often you'll get examples like a student may struggle with reading. That alone does not automatically mean that they're going to qualify for a specific learning disability. A student may struggle with focus. Again, that does not automatically mean that they're ADHD qualifications. And then, therefore, they're going to be listed as other health impaired. Again, another example, a student may avoid peers. That does not automatically mean that they're autistic. The exam wants evidence. The exam wants patterns, and the exam wants impact. And so let's make sure that we're not making one of the other mistakes, and that is jumping to conclusions. This is one of the biggest mistakes that I see, and I have to help from teacher candidates to not do this, because you need to analyze what's going on. That is jumping to conclusions, jumping to categories, backwards thinking. The label is not the starting point. As I often say, the data is. And I want you to be able to ask yourself poignant questions to ensure that you're on the right track. One of those is, what is the student struggling to access? Or what is the student struggling to participate in? Either way you ask, make sure that you're also asking yourself what functional impact exists in the classroom, because SPED 186 is deeply connected to FAPE and LRE. And your thinking has to go along those lines. Can the student meaningfully access instruction? Can they participate appropriately with supports? And what educational barriers are appearing within the scenario that they provide you with? This again is why two students with similar behaviors may require completely different decisions. That's why it's an IEP, an individualized educational plan. So I want to make sure that I practice with you. And so my first practice is going to be centered around a fourth grade student. That student is demonstrating difficulty with transitioning, limited reciprocal conversation, intensive fixation on routines, sensory sensitivities, and then they might struggle with peer interactions across multiple settings. Now I want you to pause, because I know some of your first thoughts were autism. But a stronger analyst, and that's what I want to help to build you as, will ask more poignant questions. You're going to look at that data. You're going to figure out the need, and you're going to look to see what action needs to go with that need. So what patterns are consistent? Is there a social communication impact? Is the barrier affecting educational performance? Notice the difference. The stronger response is analyzing the functional impact, or like I said before, I call it the need. That's what this TExES SPED 186 wants. Now let me push you a little bit further. What would be a weak answer choice on the exam? I hope you have something in mind, and it's probably going to be something generic, like provide academic tutoring. Why? Because tutoring does not address the underlying functional communication and social interaction needs. While a stronger support might involve a visual schedule, a structured peer interaction, predictable routines are always going to be helpful, social narratives, and explicit communication supports. I hope that you see the shift. The category alone does not drive the answer, but the need does. And here is where I love to talk with people about being that stronger analyst. And we're going to go a little bit deeper into what being a stronger analyst looks like. before we get there, I want to talk to you about this channel, my company, and what we're able to provide you with as support. And that is our first level, the first step. You're already here on our YouTube station. We would love for you to subscribe. And then we offer our next level, which is a blueprint session. We'll help to be able to help you to come up with a plan, analyze your scores, and provide you with the necessary target towards your testing date. It's what I call our DIY method. As we get deeper and we understand that we can't feel our own understanding sometimes, and we need the support. That's where our cohort comes in. It's a 5-session series, a 5-class series that helps you to gain the information that you need. And lastly, we have something new that I've implemented, and I think that it has helped many of those that have come through our program. And that is our writing class. Start out with a writing class on that Tuesday. That's free and open to all. I'm going to put the information down below. And then there's a full workshop that follows that Saturday after class 5. It's an intensive in-person opportunity for you to get the answers to the questions that you need assistance with. So now I want us to jump into a scenario, another example that could possibly trap candidates who are trying to pass this exam. Let's say that a student struggles with reading comprehension and they're performing below grade level. Immediately, many people are going to think, specific learning disability. But I want you to hold on, because the exam may include additional details. And that's what's going to help you with the deciding factor. If they list inconsistent attendance, limited prior instruction, maybe even talk about their English learner status, a lack of inventory history, or an environmental factor. And then suddenly the question you should be asking is, do we have enough evidence to support disability? That's going to change things, because not every struggling student qualifies for special education. And that's a huge domain 1 principle. Because the exam wants you to recognize the difference between instructional gaps, environmental factors, and disability-related needs. And this is where child find and evaluation decisions begin to matter. And we have another video directed toward child find, which I'll tag here for clarity, just to make sure that you have that under your belt. But this is also where I like to go into the right decision, a framework of thinking on tonight. That instead of jumping to labeling, that we train ourselves to think through the steps. And the first of those steps is always going to be the data. What is the data in the scenario telling you? What patterns are showing up consistently? Second, what's the real need? Not the symptom, but the underlying barrier. And then third, what action or support best matches the need? Is it need for an evaluation, an intervention, an accommodation? Do you know the difference between accommodation and modification? And then, of course, how can we design this to help with maybe behavior support or communication support? But again, I have to start with the data. Understand the need that they're describing, and then be prepared to have a good action. This framework helps you to slow your thinking down in a good way, because the exam punishes impulsive answers. They're waiting for you to pick those answers. And let's not give them the satisfaction of losing those points. And domain number 1, it's worth 18% of the exam. It often can be one of the deciding factors as to whether or not you'll pass. And so I want to make sure that I give you another example, but this time a written one. So we have a middle school student that demonstrates frequent emotional outbursts. They're having difficulty maintaining peer relationship, declining academic performance, and chronic anxiety that often interferes with classroom participation. And the question essentially, of course, this is a brief way of asking you, but which action would most appropriately support the student need? Now I want to address the weak test-taking mindset, because you're going to search for emotional words and jump immediately to, this might be emotional disturbance. But remember, I'm helping to build stronger analysts. And I want you to ask, what evidence exists? What interventions have occurred? And is there significant data to help you to make those justifications? Of course, educational impact is going to be involved. And then what actions are the appropriate next step? And sometimes the best answer is not place the student in special education. But sometimes it's more so of, I need more information, or I need to implement some targeted interventions. Maybe even collaborate with the TExES team. And then, of course, documentation is going to help you to identify any patterns, because the exam loves best next step thinking. And I want to give you not only the question per se, I want to go a little bit deeper and sharing with you the stems that might be there as answer choices. So again, what action would most appropriately help with the student's need? Is it to recommend immediate placement in the self-contained special education classroom, to provide the student with increased emotional support? Is it to collect additional behavior and academic data across settings while collaborating with multidisciplinary team to determine appropriate intervention and possible evaluation needs? Or maybe it is to provide the student with reduced assignments and preferential seating to minimize stress during classroom instruction. And then our last choice that we have is D, to implement disciplinary consequences consistently to improve the student's emotional regulation and classroom participation. Well, I certainly hope you chose B, because that is the correct choice. And I want to make sure that you understand why this is the correct choice. Not going to be able to share it here tonight. We'll definitely be sharing it within our community so that you have the necessary information that you need to be supportive. But again, I want to make certain that you are becoming a stronger analyst, that you are understanding what the need is, and that you are cognizant of all of the tricks that they're going to throw at you. I also want to thank you for watching. I hope that tonight as we walk, you walk away with the understanding that the SPED 186 exam is not primarily about memorizing categories, lists, things of that nature. Are they important? Absolutely, they're important. But this exam is very different from 161, particularly because it goes into scenarios. It is application analyzing based. And you have to become a very good decision maker on this exam. And the 13 categories, they matter absolutely. But the real question becomes, can you interpret the data and make educationally sound decisions that protect students' access and participation? It's the heart of this exam, and it's the most of domain number 1. And in our cohort, we talk extensively about what educational impact looks like, how these categories affect access, participation, communication, behavior, academically, and then their own independence, because we are trying to build a whole child that can be able to survive and take care of themselves to the best of their ability. And if tonight helped to shift your thinking, I always want you to drop a comment for us. But tonight's comment is data before labels. Because the mindset alone can change the way you approach an exam. And if you need help understanding what you specifically need to study next, that's our blueprint session, where we analyze your diagnostic results and help you build a study plan. Or maybe you've been struggling with the writing portion of SPED 186. I invite you to join us for our next Domain 5 writing session, where we'll practice those Pearson-style responses together. We start the discussion during our free class 5, and then we go into a full workshop, which is going to be held this month on May 30th. I want to thank you for spending time with me tonight. And remember that your certification journey is not just about passing this test. Yes, I talk about the test, but I'm more so understanding that if I can help you to understand the framework of IDEA, of FAPE, of least restricted environment, and what that looks like on the exam and in real life, you will be the special education specialist that they're looking for you to be, and you'll do well. Because it's about learning how to think through the needs of the student strategically and responsibly. This will help you in the life of your career as a certified specialist. So again, I am grateful to have you come along. I can't wait to see you again for our next conversation. And all this month, we are talking about some aspect of those 13 categories. That's my May series, and I hope to see you again next Monday. Same time, same channel. Please like and subscribe. And I will put all of the information on ways that you can join in with us as you see on our screen in our show notes. Good night, everyone.